Okay, let's get started making the Serin sling. So parts that you're going to need are the interior slip pocket. So I have 2 pieces. The size of them is listed in the cut chart. You have a pattern piece. This is the front. And then for your flap, it's recommended if you have a directional print to cut it upside down. So that way when the flap, so this is my flap. So I just finished doing the cute little embroidery design for the front. And then when you open the flap, if you have a directional print, you cut it upside down so that way it's right side up when you lift the flap up. For your back, it's a 2-part piece. So you have this back piece and then you have the strip where the flap will go right in here. This is for one of these pieces is for the inside main zipper compartment for the little tabs. I just need to cut it in half. And then these 2 pieces are for the strap side connectors. You have an exterior and a lining piece. Instead of doing waterproof canvas, I like to do some colors sometime. So this is the inside of the front flap. So the exterior flap that goes on the outside of the front, which our magnet for the flap will go onto this. And then the interior main zipper compartment, which will separate the bag into 2 slip pocket portions of it. You have your 2 exterior pieces, and then you have your 2 liner pieces. You have your main gusset piece of 1 exterior. You have your 2 liner pieces, which are the same size as your front main. And then a little bit different, because we have the zipper pocket that separates the 2 sides on the inside of the pouch, you need 2 interior gusset liners. And so these guys, you need to cut them mirrored. So one side will have a straighter edge, and then like the bottom has a little bit of a curve to it. So you need 2 of them, and they're just mirrored. So currently my straight sides are together, and then the curved sides are on the top and the bottom, or the laterals. Okay. And then for hardware, and then there's also, I've made this bag before and I have skipped using the main zipper closure portion of it, but for this tutorial I'm going to be doing the main portion. So you need a lining and your exterior for the main zipper closure. You'll also need foam for this bag. So I have my front foam, my back shorter foam, and then the little strip of foam. Make sure to cut it too. There are little cut lines on this back piece that you need to. And then you have your main foam for your exterior gusset. And those will get stitched down and around as we go along. Other items you'll need for the interior zipper pocket, you'll need a zipper. You can do zipper by the yard, or you can just do pre-assembled zipper. This is a number 3 zipper. You can use a number 5, it's okay, either way. You'll need 2, swivel clasps. For your crossbody strap, you will need a slide adjuster. For the main zipper closure, you'll need zipper tape. So zipper by the yard. You can do triangles, rectangles, or D-rings. Either way, you just need 2 of them. You need 1 zipper pull. I'm doing I don't even know where I got this. And it's the little No Mask character from Studio Ghibli. So, I don't even know if I don't think No Mask is on the fabric, but it's still Studio Ghibli, so it'll all work together. And then the last thing you'll need is a magnet. You can do a turn lock if you want to. I'm not going to be showing you how to do a turn lock in this video. I'm going to be using the rivet magnet snaps. I get these guys from Cam Snap. They're super easy and convenient. I just use my hole punch, or depending on where it is, I'll use my little hole cutting tool. I also got this from Chic Geek as well. So that's for punching my holes. And then wherever I punch a hole and my magnet goes, which I'll show you as well, I like to put like I keep my scraps of Decoville Heavy and I cut a small piece, punch a hole in it, and then it's usually a little bit bigger than the magnet piece itself, and that just helps give it a little bit reinforcement, whether it's on, I'll do it usually for just canvas and cotton woven. I won't always do it for vinyl, just depends on the vinyl. Some of them are a little bit thicker than others, so it varies, but for the most part, wherever my magnets usually go, I usually put a little bit of Decoville Heavy there. And then if you have it, you can put your label. If you have a label, if you don't have a label, no big deal. I make mine I just use embroidery, and I cut my little pieces out, and it works. I would love to eventually upgrade to maybe the Heartwood and Hide cork ones. Those ones are absolutely beautiful, or I don't know. But these ones work for now. I just have to pinch some pennies in the meantime. One thing I forgot that you will need to have is, if for your crossbody strap, if you are going to make it out of the fabric, then you'll need to cut a 4-inch wide piece by 55, somewhere between like 56 and 52. 52 will make it a little on the shorter side. Because I'm taller, I tend to make mine usually around 55, 56 if I can help it. If you don't want to do it out of fabric, you can do pre-made crossbody straps, or you can use it out of webbing. I wish I could remember where I got this. I want to say it was either Alchemats or Thumbs and Thimbles. I might be wrong. I don't remember. I wish I could. But I was just going through my webbing stash, and it's like, oh, this will look really good because we have all the different rainbow colors. We got the rainbow colors. Yeah, that'll look good together. Splashes of color. Okay. We're going to work with our flap first. I already found the centers for my top and bottom. So I'm just going to find my centers for the inner part. So you just line up your edge and make a snip. If you don't want to make a snip, you can also make a line with a marking pin. And we're going to put them right sides together. We're going to line up the notches that we just made on the bottom and the top. So we're going to start with the bottom. I'm going to throw a clip there. The top, we're not going to be sewing across the top, but we just want to make sure that it's lined up. And then we're going to sew from one side down around the bottom and up. We are not sewing across the top. We're going to sew from one side around and up at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Another way, if you are unsure about doing the seam allowance on the curves, grab your ruler, and even on there's a little bit straight, and especially like right here in the first curve, I probably took a little bit more than I should have, but you just go around. I am lining up the 1/2 inch on my ruler with the edge of the fabric. Everything we get in there, and then you just make a mark every so often. So it's kind of giving you guidelines. Yeah, I went a little bit more than half, but not the end of the world. That just makes doing your stitching your seam allowance on, especially on a curve, a little bit easier. Okay, so we're going to trim this down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Because it is on a curve, I like to use my pinking shears just because it'll help with the curve to relax a little bit more. If you don't have pinking shears, along the straight edges, you can just use your regular scissors to cut it down to about a 1/4 inch. And then down here on the bottom, you can cut it to a 1/4 inch. And then if you want to make little snips just make little snips alongside the bottom. You can do like larger ones. You can actually do just kind of like what my pinking shear looks like, just cut little triangles every so often, or you can just do cut little lines. Just a little, having the little snips or using the pinking shears just allows the fabric to have like it's like a relief cut, so it just allows it when you turn it to make it lay really nice and pretty. So now we're going to trim, or we already trimmed it. We're going to turn this. And it's probably a good thing I didn't put my applique all the way down, because I might have accidentally cut into it. So this works out. And then when you're getting your edges, I just kind of go around and I do a little roll, because we can't iron on this side. We could technically iron on this side if we wanted to, but another option is just to grab your seams and give them a little roll. Help them line up a little better, especially using with the vinyl on the outside. And then as you've rolled them and you get them flat and lined up, you can go ahead and clip around. And the clips won't be there for very long, because once we get it all rolled and lined up, we're going to top stitch it. And if you are using a thicker vinyl on your top, before you turned and we did the 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'd recommend doing a second row of stitching around. You could just go just to the outside of it, very small, but keep them close together. That will just help reinforce, especially when you have on the curves and stuff, so you don't see the stitching poke out. So we're going to go ahead and top stitch this, and I'm going to increase my stitch allowance just a little bit, and we're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch all the way around, including the top. Okay, now that we have our flap done, we can go ahead. I always do this. I always forget something. I forgot to put a magnet in. So apologies if you're following along. I always seem to forget something, and especially with doing flaps, I always manage to forget to do the magnets. If you're doing a turn lock, it's no big deal, because you need the flap to be finished for it. And that's kind of what I believe the instructions for this bag do. They use a turn lock, so there is no, if you're following along with the instructions, there is no, hey, put a magnet here. At least that's the written instructions. Okay. I'm going to grab my marking pin, and if you were to do this prior to turning, so in the instructions it says for the turn lock, the center of the turn lock is 1 inch up. So if you were to do this prior to stitching this down, I would place it 1.5 inches up to account for the 1/2 inch seam allowance if you're doing a magnet. If you are like me and have to do it after the fact, find the center and do 1 inch up, and that's where our hole will go. So I'm gonna grab might have to trim this a little bit more. Oh, it's not bad. So this is just a simple Dollar Tree cutting mat. I need to get a smaller one. Oh, snap. You'd think I would learn by now. I don't want to use my pretty rulers, but yeah, I'm gonna have to. No, I feel horrible for doing this to my rulers. Sorry, ruler. It'll be quick. And then because it's just cotton, I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to hurt. I don't want to hurt my ruler too bad. Okay, that should be through. And then on this one, I can use my hole punch, or I'm just going to use that one. And since I'm here, I'm going to pre-cut for the other one. I'm not even sure where my hole punch is, my regular hole punch. I didn't do too much damage to it. I've done some pretty tough damages to it before. So on this one, whichever one you want to put on this side, it is a personal preference. So like I said, I am doing the rivet styles from Cam Snaps. So I'm going to be using the outie piece. And then put that through, and then I put the shiny side against the fabric. And then add my rivet. And then I'm going to take this over to my rivet press real quick and give this and set this in place. I got my rivet magnet already set, so I'm going to re-stitch down this at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, we can set our flap aside, and let's go ahead and add our foam onto our pieces. So let's start with the back, the gusset. I can speak. So I'm just gonna throw some clips on intermittently, and just wherever I feel like I might need it. And then we're just basting these on, so I'm going to increase my stitch length. I am up at like a 7, so these are just being about 1/8 of an inch. I went a little wide in a couple spots, but it's not horrible, because once we actually sew it all together, the seam allowance for that should be able to hide any of the areas. Ooh, I went a little really wide right there, so hopefully that gets hidden. And this is the back. No, that's this is the back. I was grabbing the foam for the front. It's like, that's not gonna work. And then just like the gusset, we're going to just throw some clips on where you need it. I trim off the foam where it sticks out from the fabric, and when you're cutting your foam, if you didn't want to have to cut it exactly to the size or shape of your pattern piece, you can always just cut it bigger. Sew the fabric piece that it is cut the size down on top of it, and then just trim the rest of it away. That is an option. Sometimes an easier option. And then let's grab and I'm gonna wait on doing the front. if you were going to do for your flap, I did not do the optional fusible fleece interfacing for the flap. If I was gonna do it in all cotton woven or cotton canvas, then I'd probably do some woven in it, but because I have the vinyl, I decided to kind of forgo that piece. And we're going to grab our front and lining pocket. We're going to find the center. So I'm going to just take my ruler and I am positioning it between, I'm lining it up between the top notch and the bottom notch, so that way my line, when I mark down the inches that I need, it's all lined up. So I got my marking pin. This one is from Weft and Warp. Love this thing. And then, per the instructions, it says we're going to place it 5 inches from the bottom up. So I was going to mark it the other direction and I was like, that doesn't look right. It looks really low. Glad I double checked. Alright, so we got our mark. Bring out this one more time, and then I'm going to punch my hole. And then since I put the outie magnet piece, this is going to be the innie. And then I'll add my piece of Decoville heavy on the back. I'm going to go squish this down to make sure it's secure, and then we'll continue on with the front pocket. Got the rivet all squished down and ready to go, so now we can continue on. So we're going to take our lining and our main exterior, we're going to put them right sides together. We're going to line up the top notches, put a couple clips along the top just to keep everything centered, and then we just want to double check that the bottom notches are lined up. Okay, everything looks good, and we're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you are wanting to put your label, if you have a label, I personally like to put mine on the inside of the bags, but this one kind of has like the inside's a little weird, but it's not bad. There's actually on the side, there's that slip pocket. So I usually, if this is my lining and my zipper pocket was right there, I usually go right underneath the zipper on the inside. That's just where I usually put mine. If you want to put it on the front, now is the time to put your label on your front. If you were going to add your label to the back, I would recommend, like, now is the time, after you finish putting the pocket on, add your label if you're going to add it to the back. This back top part, when the bag's closed, you wouldn't see your label if you put it here, so I would not recommend putting your label there. If you wanted to put it on the flap, you could have and just put it on the top, or your other option, if you wanted to undo this again, because this part will get stitched onto the back, you could add your label to the back and it facing that, so that way when it's on the back you could see it. But so there's a few options of where you can put it, so I'm just mentioning it now for anybody if you're following along, and because I've watched some tutorials and completely forgot to put my label in, which happens. Not the end of the world. Kind of giving the roll on the seams, get them to line up. And then I'm going to top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. seam allowance. Okay, we are going to grab, I'm like, where did it's hiding underneath the foam. No wonder I couldn't find it. So I'm going to find the center. This is the front main exterior. I also grabbed the foam as well. We'll baste that on when we baste our slip pocket on at the same time. So I just want to make sure and line everything up. I'm just going to put some clips on this one to start. I'm going to line up the notches of the pocket with the front exterior on the bottom. Clip those guys together. We can sew around this all the way. We can do a 1/4 inch on the sides, and I'm just going to do an 1/8 of an inch on the top. I'm going to lengthen my stitch allowance, or seam stitch length. And now we got our front slip pocket. Oh, it almost lines up perfectly. Lines up pretty darn good over there. Pretty good here. This bottle almost lines up perfectly. I didn't even try to do that, but lucky quinkadink. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our back pieces. We're going to lay our back piece down. I can't see my center anymore, so I'm just gonna, I don't think I ever marked the center on this one. Oops. So mark that real quick. And then mark this piece. We are going to place the flap with right sides together. We're going to line up the center notches and then add a few more clips. And then we're going to stitch this down. We're going to base it at a 1/4 inch. And then we want to make sure that this is lined up the correct way. It looks opposite of the flap because, well, it is opposite of the flap because when the flap comes over. But you want to make sure that this part is facing the correct direction. We're going to put right sides together and we are going to line up our center notches. And add our clips. Okay, and we're going to sew this together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So in mine, in the instructions, it says to when you cut your foam piece, to cut this piece away from this back piece just to help reduce the bulk of it. I sometimes have trouble making sure that that part gets caught, so I just cut it to the length, and so now I'm just going to pull away the basting stitches. So I'm just cutting away, I'm going to be removing these stitches, and then I'm going to be cutting this foam piece away just because I've had trouble making sure that this piece gets caught when you do this stitch down. Oh, let's get that one still caught right there. So I'm just making sure that it gets caught, and then I can remove that, so that way it helps reduce the amount of bulk that's right there. And then when you do it, if you did the same thing I did, just make sure you don't cut your fabric or cut your foam above. And then you can also, instead of actually stitching that part down when you do the basting stitch, you can skip stitching that, so then you don't have to remove those. So we have our flap flipped up, we have our back piece flipped up, and then the bottom, this seam allowance right here, you want to make sure that it's down or pushed down towards your bottom. And then we're going to stitch through at 1/8 of an inch through the back panel, and we're going to catch this extra seam allowance, this extra piece right here. Okay, we can set our back piece aside, and we're going to be working on our gusset. We also need the connectors, connector pieces. And then I'm going to find the center, because these are only a 2-inch wide strip. So I'm marking 1 inch. So I'm folding the side end to meet the line that I just created, and I'm stitching down at this side at 1/8 of an inch. And then when we round the corner, I'm just going to take the other side and match it up. So it'll meet in the center, or it'll meet the line or the other edge of the fabric, and then go down the other side at the 1/8 of an inch. So then for these, we're going to add our D-rings to them, and we're not just going to fold over and meet the ends. So on this one, we want to partially fold it over and then bring the other end. I'm going to trim that, it's kind of long, and bring it up. You don't want to do this right along the bottom edge, because then you can see the raw edges of your fabric. So when you flip it over and you look at it, it's a folded edge and a folded edge. And then you don't want to do this where the fold is so super close to the D-ring, because then it's a lot harder, because you can only get so close to the D-ring to be able to sew across the top. So you want to kind of do it towards the middle, so that way you ensure that you catch it all the way. So this is what our little, there we go, our little D-ring strap connectors will look like. So I'm going to kind of press my gusset kind of pinch the vinyl a little bit to kind of create a little bit of a center seam so I can see where the center line would be. And so I can see my little bit of a crease, and that will, because I didn't squeeze it too hard, that line will go away. And I want to go down from the top 1.5 inches. And I'm just going to make like a little mark. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Find my center and give it a little pinch. And then again, 1.5 inches, we're going to make a mark. And where that mark is where the top of your connector strap will be. I kind of fudge it a little bit and go just a little bit above it. Just a little. Like not even 1/8 of an inch. It's very minute. And then we're just going to sew around and make a box. Make sure my raw edges are tucked in. And then so where we stitched before along it, and then I don't back stitch on this because then I will pull them through. And if you need to hand crank to make sure that you get it to line up, go ahead and do that. So I'm back to where I started. I'm going to pull a little bit longer of a tail. I'm going to flip this over and then just pull on both of these. You can do one at a time. So this side pulled up this one. And then I just like to make sure to pull those two off to the side so I know, okay, that one already came through. So that way I just keep track of which thread I'm working with and trying to pull on. Sometimes these things, and if you overlap them, it can make it a little bit harder to get this thread to come back up. Back end so you can actually get in there. Okay, this thing's being stubborn. Okay, what's going on in the front? Sometimes if it just wants to be stubborn and not want to pull through, then you just let it be and then just cut it from the front and then just tie what you can in the back. Ooh, finally got it. Yay. Because if you can't pull it through to the back, then it's not going to come undone. Well, I can't say it will never come undone. Or won't. I can't make those promises. And just give them a few knots. Trim your tails. And then I just take my lighter. Kind of give them a little schmelt and then squish them together. And now we do the same thing just on the other side. Hopefully I get the threads to come up a little easier. pull some long tails, trim your threads, flip it over to the back. Wasn't too bad. Let's try this one. Oh, much easier that time. And that's all done. And so then this is what our connectors, oops, apparently that one left a little bit of a piece of the string, just in case. So those look pretty darn good. So now we can find the center of this. Now we can either, depending on what you want to do, you can start with the front or the back. It's personal preference. So I grab the back piece. So I'm going to line my notch up with the notch on the gusset with the notch on the bottom of the back fabric. The back piece. And with the curves, if you wanted to, you could make little snips here. We're going to be sewing around here at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if you wanted to make 1/4 inch snips, you totally can. So don't be afraid to add as many or as few clips as you need them. I usually like to go this way. Now that it's all clipped together, we can go ahead and stitch this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to, before I trim it, I always tend to like to kind of turn it a little bit, or turn it out, and then see if I have any puckers or any issues, because if there are, now is the time I can fix it fairly easily. And if you were doing this with a vinyl and a vinyl, I would highly suggest doing a second row of stitching. I would stitch to the end, so what would be the inside of the bag, just do it in second row, just to the side of the main stitching, just to kind of help relieve the tension on that. But that looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim this down to a 1/4 inch. Okay, now we can grab our front piece. We're going to line up the notches again at the bottom. And then And just keep following and adding your clips. Okay, and now we're going to stitch around and do this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So kind of a little trick here, if you actually sewed or basted your front foam and the front pocket on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance and you happen to have a 1/4 inch foot, you can stitch with your foot along your first stitch line and that will give you your 1/2 inch seam allowance. So then you're not trying to have to gauge where it is on your, if you have like a little cheat sheet of what your stitch lengths or seam allowances are there. But so that's just like an extra little bonus, but that's only if you have a 1/4 inch wide foot and you did the 1/4 inch here. So I'm going to pre-turn this just because I want to make sure that my front looks good. If I need to change or make any adjustments, if there's any puckers or anything, because as soon as I cut the seam allowance or cut it down to a 1/4 inch, it just makes it a little bit harder to make any adjustments. And I do have a small little pucker there, so right here, but everything else looks good. Okay, so I'm going to hold that side with my finger, or try to keep that side held down. And then I'll just throw a clip on it so that way I remember where it's at. Okay, let's see what's going on the inside. Okay, so it's right here. Okay, so I'm going to cut those away. I'm going to add a couple see, and if I already cut this down to a 1/4 inch, this would be a little bit harder to do. But it wouldn't. It's not the end of the world. It wouldn't be. It's not incredibly difficult. Do a few back stitches. And make sure to go past where you cut away and then make sure it's on top, so that way it will help hold that in place. Let's try this again, just to make sure. And that's the perk and nice part about doing a bag with foam. Foam doesn't really wrinkle as much. Yes, my cotton might wrinkle, but I can iron the wrinkles out fairly easily, so not a big deal. Okay, let's see what our front looks like. Looks good. We got some of our old stitches right there sticking out. Let's see if we can get the lighter down in there real quick. Okay, that looks good. And then just because this is a little bit thicker, because it has not only the regular front, it also has the 2 layers for the front slip pocket, I'm going to go ahead and do an additional row of stitches just to be able to help out and reinforce. And then plus, because of where I redid that, it'll just add an extra additional layer of support. Okay, and now I can trim this down to 1/4 inch. We're now going to move to the inside of the bag. So we're going to grab our first lining piece. We're going to find the center of the top. And the bottom. And then we're going to grab our interior zipper pocket like pieces. We'll find the center of the tops. So grab one of your pieces and we're going to draw 1 inch down, centered on the back of the pocket. It is 7 inches long, so I will draw 3.5 this direction, and 1, 2, 3.5 this direction. And then I like to just line up a more of a solid 1 inch line, and we're gonna do a 3/8 inch. We're gonna draw a second line down. Okay. And then you can just connect the lines. And if you want to add a 1/4 inch, make little dots. Those will come into play in a little bit. Oh, I don't know why I put my ruler away. And then we're going to mark the center, or not really mark, we're going to place the ruler 1 inch down, and we're going to line up the center notch with the center notch of the top to make it 1 inch down. So in total our zipper will be 2 inches down at the top. And then, as I moved it, so let's double check. Okay, and we just want to make sure that your fabric is lined up with the ruler. And if you wanted to add tape or anything like that, you can, just to help hold that down if you need it. Okay, we're at the corner. And so then you're just going to sew around on top of the line that you drew. to just pinch this in the middle. And you're going to make a little cut. So that will allow you to get your scissors in, and you're going to just cut in the middle to that little dot we made. And then from there you're going to cut to the corners. You want to get as far into the corners as you can without actually cutting your thread. This will help your corners lay nice and flat. And if you do cut your thread, just throw it back underneath the machine and stitch over it again. And then we're just going to work this pocket, just pressing. If you wanted to take this over to the iron, you can, to get it to press, especially once you turn it to the other side to get it to lay nice and flat. So just work your seam, roll the edges. If you want to add a couple clips just to kind of help, almost like train, I guess, train your fabric to stay there. Push this through. Once you get your fabric all kind of turned out and like finger pressed, or if you want to take it over to the iron and give it a little press, you can. Make sure to kind of squish it down. And then this is where my other zipper comes into play. And then as you're lining it up, if you're using a pre-made zipper, you want to make sure that this metal piece is far enough away so if you're gonna stitch right here, you don't want this metal to be right on top of it, because you definitely do not want to sew. Your needle will not go through that. It will have issues. So you want to keep that a little bit away. You don't want it right up against it. And then same with the other side, because the zipper, you can move that out of the way, but those little metal teeth right there, you definitely don't want to sew over those, so you want to make sure those aren't right up against the edge. So if you're using this is a 9-inch zipper tape or pre-made zipper, if you wanted to use something larger, it would make it a lot easier, and then you wouldn't have to worry about, oh, where are my metal pieces, am I going to sew over them? But then if you'd end up wasting those edges. So I just make sure to kind of like center it and make sure I'm not going to run anything over. And if you want to, you can use double-sided stick tape to help hold your zipper in place as you're going. Would make life pretty easy. I sometimes have trouble getting the paper to peel off the tape sometimes. Making sure my fabric stayed where I wanted it to be. My zipper's where I want it to be. And then stitch around it at 1/8 of an inch. And then I can't technically make that turn there because my zipper is actually there. So I'm lifting my foot, picking up the zipper, and I'm pushing it back out of my way. And then I can round the corner, and I'm underneath here. I'm holding the teeth, or the two sides of the zipper tape together. so that way I don't get one to get it to split and then it gets a little wonky on me. And then I don't want to back stitch here because I'm going to pull the threads to the back. Okay, they're met back up. Flip it over. Kind of stitched over that a little bit. So then I'm going to pull my threads to the back. And go ahead and give these guys and tie them into a knot. A little squish. Okay, and then we're going to take our other piece, we're going to line it up with the notch to the notch up at the top. And just clip our way around. And then something that I picked up from another bag designer, I love the way that she does this in her patterns. She folds over the bottoms, and then we'll clip those, and then we'll fold over the bottom on the other side. So this just makes it really nice, so when you go to finish your bag and you pull the zipper, you birth it through the zipper pocket, and then you go to stitch this is already essentially folded in on itself for you, so you don't have to try to tuck it, get the lines, the edges to meet up, and then you don't have this like those weird, sometimes you get those bulky corners. It's already folded in and it already looks pretty, so then all you have to do is just sew along the line, and that's it. Since I saw that in that pattern, I've been doing it to all my zipper pockets ever since. Even if it doesn't say it in the instructions, I still do it. It's a really nice way to do the zipper pockets. And I'm stitching around my pocket at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then as you get closer to your zipper tape, just double check that as you're going up that you're not going to run into the metal of if you are doing a pre-made zipper. Okay, so we have our interior zipper pocket. And so I'm going to add, this is where I add my label. So I will close that to make life a little easier at the moment. I just do kind of like a minimal crease so I can find my center fairly easily, or I could use my ruler as well. And I just kind of center my label. Close enough to the edge. Make a nice turn. Okay, and I'm not back stitching on this. I just got to where I ended where I started. I'm gonna flip it over and pull on my threads. And that's our zipper pocket, and I'm going to open that because I can't tell you how many times I forget to open that and then have to try to finagle it open when I go to birth it. Our next part, we're going to grab a zipper tape. This is going to be for the center divider pocket. My little pieces, I cut they're the same size as the strap connector. I cut them in half, or the one in half. And then from this point, we just fold them in half. And then we need to make sure. Okay, do I want calcifer? Do I want the little flame guy? Or do I want... Neither of them are really on the fabric, but who do I want? Let's put this cute guy on the outside. We'll put this one on the inside. All right, so we got to make sure that our zipper is on. And so if I don't have one of those fancy little zipper jig thingamabars, so what I do, whatever my zipper tape starts at is what I want to make sure that it comes off the top of the zipper. So I feed them in one side at a time, and then you can peek through the top. And as you're feeding it through, when it comes out, it's the same as what it was when it started. So then that means my zipper will turn out beautiful. And then you just make sure heat seal the ends. So we have our zipper pull on, which is like half the battle because I don't know how many times I've forgotten to put my zipper on. I know it's like we've all been there. And so I've already folded the fabric piece in half. So now I'm folding my half piece in half. Just gonna throw a clip on it just because. And then I'm gonna fold the other part in half as well. And then technically this little folded over diddy-wop is what we're gonna be ended with. So I'm gonna grab that and place that. Oh, do I want the brown to show? Ooh, I like this side better. We're gonna have the blues show. I like that. And then to throw some clips on there. I'm gonna go from the outside. Okay. Oh, and the length of your zipper that you need to have is in the instructions. So make sure to look inside your instructions to get the length of your zipper. If you need to know, it's on page 10. That all folded over. What side do oh that's easy. It's the same on both sides, so no problem there. And then we're going to fold that on top. And then clip that down. Clip that down. Okay. And so then we're just going to run an 1/8 of an inch. We're going to top stitch that down. And we just want to make sure that we catch both the top and the bottom in this. Even though the back stitch can end up getting cut off anyway. So if you have a hump jumper, you can use a hump jumper. I don't, so I just use my little snips. Then I press it up against my zipper, making sure my fabric is all still in a line. And I push against my zipper tape to get underneath my foot. Ooh, let's just swing this around. So that works. Okay, so make sure that those guys are all lined up. And again, just gonna push this in. That's just like using this is just something that I do because I've noticed instead of having my foot sit there and struggle trying to get over that and just fight it and then have a nest of thread on the back because I don't have a little cute hump jumper little product. And then you can use, what is it, like you can fold up some fabric, you can use different stuff to create a hump jumper. I just haven't. Then my little snips works. And so then I'm trimming off the edges so that way it's the same as my scissors. And we have a beautiful zipper. Okay, so now we're going to grab all of that. And we're going to find the top middle. We're going to make our snips. I almost need some iPro over here. That one almost went in my mouth. I've had little snip pieces fly off, and thankfully I was wearing glasses because it did hit me and hit the glasses. And I've had another time where like I dinged it off my forehead. Yeah, I try to angling it towards the trash can. Doesn't always work. And when I cut this, I had it folded over and I didn't realize how close the selvage edge was. So thankfully this is the inside of the pocket, and I'm hoping my seam allowance will hide most of that. Oops. Okay, so now we are going to find the middle of our zipper. So I'm going to fold and put the edges together and hold that. Take my lovely marking pin. And of course I'm using your gray zipper tape so it doesn't show up as easily. I could get a Sharpie because you're only marking just a little bit. A black Sharpie would totally show up, but this works too. Okay, so depending on which way you want your zipper pull, well, you can flip this around to get it to how you want it to be. So we're going to place the right side of the zipper with the right side of the fabric, and we're going to line up our mark with our notch, and we're going to clip that down. And then I'm going to base this down at 1/8 of an inch first. And we're going to grab our lining piece and we're going to place that over the top. And we're going to line up our notches. Because before we only stitched right on here, we're going to sew all the way across at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you need to, pause before you reach your zipper pull, lift your foot, and then see under here, and then pull your zipper out of the way. Going to flip this so then we'll have wrong sides together of the pocket. Just going to throw a clip down at the bottom, and then you can, I could technically take this over to the iron and press this since both of them are cotton. Okay, now we're gonna we're gonna top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing just for the other side now. Okay, so now we are going to line up our edges. So I like to start at the points, and then I can come down here and line up all of our little snips for center. We're going to kind of baste all these layers together at we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Right, let's take a peek to see how much of that selvage edge is showing. So not much. That's fantastic. And we are in, technically when we sew our gussets on to the bottom of this, or to the outside, it's going to be a 1/2 inch, so that is going to go bye-bye, so we won't see any of that selvage. Yay! Let's grab one of the sides, and we're going to find the center of this one. Let's find the center of the other one. So we can set one side off to the edge, and so you want to make sure that you recognize which side is the straight side, which side has the curve. So the side that's straight is up on the top, and then the curve is down here at the bottom. So we want to make sure to put the straight side against the divider pocket. And we're going to line up our notches, and we're going to work around. And as you get into the corner on your lining piece, because the seam allowance is a 1/2 inch, so you can make some pretty big snips, but just be careful you don't go like too big. Okay. And that will help us get around that corner. And then if you want to, you can use your full scissors to add snips into the divider pocket itself, if you so desired. And yes, this is meant to go higher, so don't worry, you didn't cut it wrong. I know the first time I made it, I'm like double checking myself, I'm like, did I mean to do this? Is it supposed to do this? And now we're going to sew around this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, it looks like the straight side's on the top. So let's flip this around, line up our notches, and we'll clip around. Okay, so before we start stitching this one down, it is going to start at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and we're going to gradually increase it to 5/8 going around, and then gradually decrease it back to a 1/2 inch when we get around to this side. Okay, and then in doing so, we just need to make sure we're going really slowly. We're double checking our underside. Make sure that's getting tucked out of the way. We might have to do some maneuvering on that one. And then we want to make sure we're not accidentally sewing through, because you don't want to increase to 5/8 too early, because you don't want to accidentally sew through your tabs, your zipper tabs on the sides. Okay, so just take your time as you're going. There's no rush. And again, we're starting at we're starting at a 1/2 inch, gradually increasing it to 5/8. So I'm reaching underneath, and I'm going to be assisting as I'm working around the corners at my 5/8 inch seam allowance. I'm making sure that my bottom is continually staying out of the way. So if you're going to be doing this bag on a domestic machine, on your cotton woven, or if you're doing canvas and you interface these inner pieces, I highly, highly suggest you keep your stabilizer or your interfacing, whatever you put on the back of your fabric, keep it at least 5/8 away from the edge. If you go 3/4 away from the edge, even better, because that little bits, you're never going to notice that, like when you're actually utilizing and using the bag, but it's just going to help minimize the amount of bulk going through here, because there's 2 layers of waterproof canvas and then 4 layers of cotton. I have 2 layers of canvas and 2 layers of cotton woven, and all of them are interfaced, and I kept the interfacing all the way to the edge, but I'm using my industrial machine. And again, so if you are doing this on a domestic, make sure to keep your interfacing out of your seam allowance for this area specifically, so at least 5/8. Okay, so now that we are done all the way around, we're going to trim this down to 1/4 inch. Now we're going to grab our lining pieces, and let's mark the center for this one before we get going on it. So this is a side that doesn't have anything on it. If you wanted to, essentially you really could add, since this is like an open panel, you could add another slip pocket to it if you really wanted to. You could also add an additional zipper pocket to the inside. Then you would literally have 1, 2, 3 zipper pockets on the inside, and then essentially two slip pockets, because you'd have one on this side and then one on this side. You could have all the pockets on this guy. Lots of pockets. Okay, so now that we have those, and then in the pattern it recommends to have the zippers going the same direction. So if they're both closed, they're on the same side. And then if they're both open, again, same side. It just makes it easier, because then you're not like one's going one direction, one's going the other direction. But if you want them to be on opposite ends, so more like this, so when they're closed they're on opposites, that's completely up to you. However you want to put your bag together, it's your choice. So I'm just going to keep mine and have the zipper stay on the same side. And we're going to match up our notches at the bottom. And then clip around. And then as we get into this corner, we can add some notches to them. This is going to be sewn at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so we can do some decent little snips, but I'm not going to go crazy deep on them. Okay, we're all clipped up, and so we're going to sew around at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we can trim this down to a 1/4 inch. And we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. So here is our lining all finished. On the inside, we have our, sorry, that was Soraya running through. We have our zipper pocket that we're going to be birthing through. We have a slip pocket side here. We have a large zipper pocket here. And we have another slip pocket side here. And again, if you wanted to, you could totally add another zipper pocket right here. So literally you could have all the pockets. Like this thing is like, it's a good size. It's not super tiny, but it's not overly huge. This is like a fantastic size little crossbody, and it's got so much storage. Like there is, yeah, like storage for days. Like so much storage. Okay, I love that, how much storage options there are on that thing. Okay, let's grab our, we're gonna be working on our main zipper pocket. And again, if you do not want to do a main zipper or a recessed zipper on this, you can totally skip it. I've done it before. I'm gonna mark out where our zipper is gonna go ahead of time. So we're going to mark 3/8 of an inch on one side. So that'll go for one direction, and then it's 3/8 inch on the other. But knowing my luck, I'll probably end up grabbing like the wrong one and try to use it. So I'm just gonna mark both. Good. It doesn't hurt. And to make life easy, I have my, it's been hit a couple times. You're going to split your zipper, and then you're going to fold it back on itself, and then kind of like make a sandwich. So it will, the front of it will look like that. So it makes like a little L, and then everything on the side. I'll do that again a little bit closer. So we have her here. Let me bring the light up. There we go. Over here. We fold it back. And then we have this. And then kind of bring this part up to the top. So you kind of have to let go of that, so then you get a like a triangle wedge thing. So this is what the back looks like. And the squeaky toy would be one of my children, more than likely Soraya. So that's what the little sandwich thing looks like. And then to help hold it in place, because we're going to sew right here along the edge. I just go a little bit in. And so that holds it. So this is what it looks like up close. If I can get it, or I'm on autofocus. So there's the back. And then we're going to sew right here along the edge. So when we pull the needle, we have our angle. So again, on this side, we're going to fold it back, and then we kind of let go of that piece, and then bring this corner piece up. So we make an L. And then there's our ends. And then depending on how you want your zipper to look, either you can have both so they both face, so if we're looking at it like this, they face this outward like this. You can have it to where they face inward like this. You can have it where they face one direction or that direction. So there's multiple ways to set up your zipper. So it just depends on how you want it to look. So because they don't really, they don't really match up this way. Because sometimes you can cut your fabric to where they mirror each other, and then they actually they line up somewhat, because then you have the seam allowance too. So I'm just going to leave it to where they face inward. Did I mark that? Is it? Yep. And so we're going to start this zipper 3/8 of an inch away. So we already marked our 3/8 of an inch. So the front of our zipper is going to go right at that mark. And then we're going to clip our zipper and our fabric together. And we're going to baste this on I wasn't supposed to sew that all the way at the end. Okay, you're not lined. You don't want to cut anymore. Time for some new snips. Okay, I need to trim this back because I wasn't supposed to go all the way. Kind of a good thing that I marked the 3/8 inch on both ends, because I'm going to fold that over at the 3/8 inch mark on this side, and then I'm going to re-stitch that. Well, you guys probably noticed while I was doing this that I was doing it, sewing it on incorrectly. Okay, take 2. Let's try that again. So I didn't need to mark those, I needed to mark these. Try this again. So we're lining up the edge of our zipper with 3/8 inch mark. And then I'm going to fold over the other 3/8 inch mark that we made on the other side. If we're going to have them be, depending on the direction, so that would be, if I want them to face inward, that would be the correct way. And I'm just lining up the ends. And folding over our edges to match what's on the lining side. And I'm going to sew this at a 3/8 inch of a seam allowance. And then once we sew over the zipper, you're going to turn it, and then you want it to be at 3/8 of an inch, which it is, and then we're going to sew down this line. Side, technically, not line. And then I like to trim, including the zipper on it too. Not the full corner of the zipper, just a little, just a tad bit of it, or a little bit of the corner. And then you can turn it out. And that's why this is why you don't want to cut too much of that zipper off, because if you accidentally cut too much, you could accidentally pull that zipper all the way out, which I've done it. And then we're just making sure to line up our edges. And we're going to sew around at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. process for the other side. And then at this point, it's more so instead of folding over at the 1/8, you really want to make sure you're matching up with that. And if it, sometimes the 1/8 or the 3/8 will still line up, which on this occasion it does. I've had some times where I've needed more, needed less. It just, for some reason when I do these, it just, every time it varies. We're sewing this at 3/8. Okay, so there's our zipper tape for our recess zipper, and now we can actually add our zipper. So again, you just want to make sure to note that what the zipper looks like. Start on one side, then add the other, and then you can push it, start feeding it through. And when it comes out, you want to just double check. Yep, looks like it did when it started. And even then, on these ones, you'll only really notice, like, if it's like this. Like, once you add the zipper, it looks good. Like, I could probably, if I want to get super picky, this side's like a tiny bit higher, so I could like readjust this, but it's so minute, it's really not that noticeable. If it was a lot more, then yes, but it's not, so I'm not going to worry about it. And then we're going to find the center of our zipper panel. Per the instructions, it says to measure out 3.5 inches, 1, 2, 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to make a little mark. So it says we could cut that off and then go forth. So if you were to make this again, I made a note in mine that when I cut my zipper tape, I'm gonna cut it 1 inch, and it's like, this is like, because I cut it just a little over 14, so this is about 1.25 inches longer. So I'm probably gonna just cut it at like 12 and 3/4, 12 and 5/8, somewhere in there, just so that, because that's 1.25 inches, like, because of the, I do zipper by the yard, it's like a bunch of inches, like that adds up. So I made a note to shrink it down and not use as much. And let me grab. Okay, I have some. Totally forgot about this part and having the zipper end. So in my supplies at the beginning, I failed to mention this one. You will also need just so I can see where my little screw is. Don't want to lose that. So I'm going to fold my zipper onto itself. I want to make sure to heat seal this because it'll be easier to get it to fit in if I don't have any rough edges. I just start with one side, tuck that little piece in, and then just kind of work it inside the best you can. I don't think I'm gonna get that in much more. So we have a little screwdriver. Having a magnetic tip one is so nice to have and is totally worth it. And then this is Loctite. This is, well, the blue. So blue means you can take it apart. If you were to use red, you can't take it out. Oop. So I'm just going to add a drop onto the threads. This will just help make sure that it is secure in place. And then I know you guys aren't going to be able to hear it with the squeaky toys going on. So I have it in, and it's lefty loosey righty tighty, so I should turn it to the right. But you want to make sure that this is seated properly, because it is such a, the threads in that screw and then also in the zipper end are so small, you don't want to accidentally strip your zipper or the zipper head if you're trying to crank on it and trying to get it in too hard, or trying to screw it in. So go back to the left a little bit. Okay, so we are seated properly. If you weren't seated properly and you went back to the left, you should hear like a little pop or like a little like a little noise, because then it means that it's like boop, it's like it's seated correctly. So then when you go back to the other way and screw it in, just keep turning it, and I'm not turning on it too hard. Oop, as I let go. That's how little effort I was holding on to it. And so now I'm turning it a little bit harder, just because we're getting into the zipper portion. But I'm not pushing downward force onto the screw. I'm literally just twisting. And so now it's in all the way, and it's good. And adding that little Loctite little drop on the threads will just help secure that in place so it doesn't accidentally back itself out. Then we have a beautiful zipper end. Okay. Grab your lining, and we're going to put so it's right side up, and we're going to line one of our sides matching the notches. We're going to stitch this zipper panel, main zipper panel opening thing. Again, words are not always my favorite thing. We're going to stitch this down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We'll do the other side, matching our notches. And again, this is at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, we are getting closer. In doing so, we want, what do we want? Oh, farts. I did not double check this. I am just having one fun time doing this. I'm gonna take this off because it's gonna bother me. So sewing. Here's the main zipper on. Double check which direction your zippers are on the inside. So that way all the zippers are on the same side, if you choose to do it that way. But I definitely want to have my zippers going the same direction, because at the end, like, it's a little bit harder to be able to reach that, where over here this opens a lot better. Kind of, but then yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna switch them because it's gonna bug me. Okay, round 2. Okay, let's just double check. Okay, zipper, zipper. Okay. Trying out these. I got them in the Marmy No project box forever ago, and I've never used them, so now's a good time to try it, see if I like them. Okay. Oh, that sucked. Yay! Much better. Yeah, see, when you open it up, the zippers are all on that side. So much more room. There's nothing in the way. Yeah, a lot better. Way more accessible. Alright, now is the fun time of trying to put this together. And again, remember, I'm going to remember this time. Open! Okay, we want to put this on the side with our zipper pocket. So this is the fun part of squish, squish, squish. And we want to make sure to tuck the zipper. If you're doing the one with the main zipper closure, you want to make sure to tuck your zipper tail out of the way. And we're going to just stuff this down on that one side so that it's easier to pull through here. And we're stuffing, and we're stuffing. And I'm going to nest these, lining up our seams. Lining up our notches. Put a couple here. Flip it over. Line up our other notch. And then come to the edges. Line that one up. Line up that one. That one's a nice. Oh, it's a glitter clip. I'm like, that one's got some nice hold. I liked it. Oh, broken nails. Yay. My nails breaks way too easy, which is a bummer. Alright, so add as many or as few clips as you want. I think this will be okay for me. I think. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay. And we're going to sew around. We're going to sew this up at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Oh, I was waiting for it. I'm like, I know I'm gotta be close to that edge, into that bobbin. And there it is. That's as much as, That's not bad. I'll take that. I got pretty dang far. Right, let's get that last little piece and then we can trim the seam allowance and then birth this. Right, let's trim this down to a 1/4 inch. Okay, now the birthing begins. It's so nice that I actually remembered to open that zipper. Too bad. Nice part about foam, it's squishy, and a big opening is nice. Now I'm just trying to work everything. I just stuff that zipper back in for now. I want to try to roll my seams. It's going to be kind of hard right here where this is, but it's okay. We'll get it. So, put it there. Now we're going to top stitch this. 4.5. Something that I saw in another tutorial that I absolutely loved and have been incorporating it into other bags is starting in a seam and then working around and then ending in that same seam and then pulling them through. And I'll show you that part. I loved how that is, and you can't see where the start and stop is. It just looks, I don't know, I really like the way it ends up looking. So we're gonna have to get our bag a little smooshed, and then because of the bulk that's right here of all the layers getting folded over, instead of doing it at 1/8 of an inch, I do my top stitching at a 1/4 inch. Just because then I avoid this, then I don't have that bulk to try to get through, and then sometimes the thread and the feet and all this stuff, and then I end up getting some of those knots on the back of the thread. This just helps me to avoid that extra bulkiness, trying to stitch through that. And especially if you're on a domestic machine, and depending on the materials that you're using, going a little bit lower, you avoid that super bulky area. And then I just want to, I'm holding my threads and I'm dropping my needle just to make sure that I am actually going to start in the seam, which I am in the seam, and we will stitch around. So when I'm over here, because I couldn't clip that to help hold it down, I'm using my fingers to make sure to press the inside down, and then my fingers on top are kind of holding it in place, acting as the clip per se. you get to this edge, just make sure that your zipper is out of the way. You don't want to accidentally stitch over it. And then a little cheat method that I've done, instead of trying to sit here and fight the bulk, I'm trying to get over that seam, I reach my hand back, and as I'm going over it, I will pull on the fabric and that's already gone through, and I'll kind of pull on it to kind of help feed it underneath, just so then it, like, I don't get that knotted thread, especially on the industrials. I don't get that bunched up thread underneath. And we're getting closer to where we started, so we want to make sure that we stop in that same seam. And one more. Okay. And then move up. We're going to pull a long tail. We're going to, so I'm just going to show you where I pulled, so you can see where the bulkiness is. And I don't have those loose, especially on the industrials. I don't get those extra, like where the thread kind of wants to spool up. And if you have an industrial machine, you've probably have seen it before, but this is what it looks like when I kind of pull it through and help assist it through. So again, that's just what I do. May not be for everybody. So just like you do with all the other, like you pull it through to the back, so we are technically pulling we're going to pull the thread from the front to the back. Thread all four through the eye of the needle, and this is where having a large eye is very handy. So we have the seam right here where we started and stopped. We're going to take, so holding your thread so you don't lose them, or the tails of them, you're going to go where your threads are at in the top stitching line. You're going to go in the seam, and then we have the exterior and the interior. You want to come up right in between those two layers. If I can. So this is where having a thimble might come in handy. And I want it right in. Okay, there we go. Okay, you can see my needle coming up right there. If you can, there you go. So we have my needle is coming up right in between the exterior and the interior. And then you're going to pull your needle all the way out. And you're going to take your threads with you. So now all four threads are in between the exterior and your interior. Okay, so you can set your needle aside. And then it doesn't matter how you split these, you're just going to take 2 and 2. And you're just going to tie a knot, and make sure to pull it really tight so it gets it back down in between the layers, or in between the sides, or seams, in between the stuff. Oop, I missed one. Pull it tight. And then just one more, just because I like doing 3. Make sure to pull it really tight. And then we're going to snip. And then take our lighter and kind of bounce it on it. And you can also take your snips and kind of give it a press while it's still hot. And check that out. Like, you would never know like you don't have a knot on the inside or the outside. Like you're not gonna know where you started and stopped. It just makes for a beautiful way to finish the bag. I absolutely love the tutorial that I saw for a bag on doing it this way. And like I said, I've been doing all my bags just like that, and it's fantastic. I love it. Okay, so now we have the, well, almost the last part. So let's grab out our pocket. So like I said earlier, this was in another method that I saw for another bag pattern in a different company. And I absolutely love it. So now, because our ends are already tucked, so we already know, all we have to do is just match the fold in. And just tuck them all the way across. And just look how nice, like that looks really nice. And then you just sew right across the edge. Now we can stuff that back down into the pocket. And I'm just kind of getting to the corners and kind of trying to poke them outward. There we go. So we have our front slip pocket that almost matches up perfectly. And then on the inside, we have a slip pocket here, zipper pocket, slip pocket or divider, and then we have an additional smaller zipper pocket, which you could totally do a second one on this side. Like I said, all the pockets, like just store all the things. And then this one is quite large. Like I can get my whole hand in that, and there's no white. Yay, my salvage doesn't show. That's so pretty. Oh my gosh, I love this bag. Really? Come on. There we go. And then we get all of our loose threads, and then add our snap. Yay! The bag's finished, but we're not quite there yet. We are almost done, but not quite. I would celebrate, but we still have our strap to do. Which sometimes doing the strap at the very beginning is so nice to do, because then when you actually finish your bag, you're like, I am actually done. And then you can really celebrate. But so close yet so far. So on your slider, if it's an adjustable slider or a stationary slider, you just take your strap. So I have on my slider, this is the front, and then you can tell that this is the back because that's where the sides come and fold over. So from the back, go up and then go down on the other side of the bar. And then I don't leave a ton of tail on it because I can get pretty close to it. And then I don't start right on the edge. I kind of start a little bit in. And then I go down. And then I back stitch all the way back up. And then I do a couple stitches forward. Give me the heat, man. We need some heat. Sorry, my movie quotes. So that was from The Fifth Element. such a good movie. Sorry. My brain does weird things. And then I cut my strap to 56 inches, so it's on the longer side, which is good for me. So on the opposite end, making sure that there's no twists in your strap, you're going to go from the downside up and over. So that's one of your swivel clasps, and then you're going to go up, over, and then it will look like that. And then you can pull a little more. And then making sure, so if we have it correct the right side up, so you can see the little bar, and then on the wrong side you would see this side. We're going to make sure our swivel clasp is up, and then we can fold it underneath. And then depending on how much you want to have across, it's completely up to you. If you want to do like the whole box thing, you totally can. I just sewed a line. And again, it's like, we need some heat, Mom. Sorry, I make myself laugh. And there is our crossbody strap, looking all pretty, all super colorful. And we'll just clip those guys on. Thank you for watching this tutorial of the Serin Sling from Bagstock Designs. If at any time you'd like something in the video, give me a thumbs up or hit that subscribe button for more videos to come.